so we want to use long division to divide this polynomial. So what we want to do is set up the long division table. This value right here is called your dividend. And that's what you typically see under the division bar. This value right here is called your divisor. Okay, and that's what goes in front of the division bar. So I'm going to put a 3x plus 4 in front of a regular looking division bar. Now there's some significant points we need to make here. The 3x plus 4 is very helpful if it's in descending order, which means the higher exponent power first. So 3x plus 4 is in descending order because this is x to the first, and this is really x to the 0 power out here. The dividend also needs to be in descending powers order, and if you're missing an exponent, then you would put a 0x to that power also as part of the polynomial. This is not missing anything. Notice it's a 3, 2, 1 constant, which means every exponent is represented and they are in descending order. So I'm going to put 6x to the third plus 17x squared plus 27x plus 20. Okay? Now, here's what I want you to note. The very first step, what we're going to do is we're only going to look at the 3x and the 6x to the third. So the rest of the divisor, anything after the first term, we're going to pick up later. The rest of the dividend, we're also going to pick that up later too. So I'm only focusing on 3x and 6x to the third. So it is a division step. It is 6x to the third divided by 3x. But I think you'll find it easier to ask yourself, 3x times what value gives you 6x to the third power? So just look at the number part first. 3 times what gives you 6? And that's a 2, right? Because 3 times 2 is 6. And then x times x squared gives you x to the third. So again, 3x times what gives you 6x to the third? And the answer is 2x squared. So I line my 2x squared up above my 17x squared underneath here. Now it is not required that you line up like terms here, but I do think it's a good idea. Okay, now your next step, okay, watch this, is you're going to multiply your 2x squared times your 3x and then your 2x squared times your 4. Okay, and that is a commutative property. Okay, so here we go. 2x squared times 3x is 6x to the third. Notice my like terms line up here. Then 2x squared times 4 is 4x squared, 8x squared, and I want it to line up with the squared. So it's positive, so I'll put plus 8x squared. Okay, so again, 2x squared times 3x is 6x to the third. 2x squared times 4 is 8x squared, and my like terms line up. These like terms must line up. If not, sometimes you won't put anything here, and you might just have an x term that you put here. Not on this problem, but keep that in mind. Sometimes you have to skip terms to line up your like terms. Now the next step is a suggested step. You can subtract like you normally do with just numerical long division, but I think it's best to change the signs and add. Okay, so I'm going to make this positive 6x to the third negative. I'm going to make this positive 8x squared negative. And again, what I'm doing is change signs, then add. Okay, so I've got a 6x to the third and a negative 6x to the third. I'm adding together, they cancel. I've got a 17x squared, I'm adding to a negative 8x squared, which is going to give me a 9x squared. And then the 27x I'm going to pull down, and the 20 I'm going to pull down. Okay, now I start that process all over again where I look at just the first guy in line and just the first guy in line. And I ask myself, what do I multiply 3x by to make it a 9x squared? Okay, so I do 3 times 3 will make it a 9, and then an x times an x will make an x squared. So again, that's going to be 3x. I'm going to line it up above its like term. Okay, And now I do that trick where I distribute. I multiply 3x times 3x, and then I'll multiply 3x times 4. Okay? So 3x, this guy, times 3x is 9x squared. And then 3x times 4 is going to be plus 12x. Again, make a note. Are like terms lined up? Yes, they are. So that means it's time to change the signs and add. So this positive 9x squared turns negative. And this positive 12x also turns negative. And then I add like terms. These cancel. A 9x squared added to a negative 9x squared cancels. That should always happen. 27x added to a negative 12x is going to be 15x, and then the plus 20 just comes directly down. And then I do this again. I ask myself, the first guy in line, what do we multiply it by to get the first guy in line here? And that's a 5. 3x times 5 gives you 15x, so I put plus 5 because it's a positive 5. And now I do the distributive property. 5 times 3x is 15x, and then 5 times 4 is 20. This last line, you still have to change the signs and add. 15x added to a negative 15x cancels. 20 added to a negative 20 also cancels, and that gives me my remainder of 0. Okay? Now there's a way you're supposed to always write your answer, and that is of the form quotient plus remainder over the divisor. Okay, now for this problem, my quotient always is above here, so my answer is 2x squared plus 3x plus 5 plus my remainder is 0 over the divisor, which is 3x plus 4. I am happy to see this answer. Since 0 divided by 3x plus 4 is just 0, you could also get the problem correct by telling me 2x squared plus 3x plus 5, since there is a 0 remainder. Okay, so we need to use long division to divide. So again, the 4x to the 4th minus 4x squared plus 6x, that's called your dividend, and that's going to go underneath your fraction symbol, and the x minus 4 is going to go in front, okay, and that's called your divisor. So x minus 4, and then we'll have 4x to the 4th. Now notice we don't have an x to the 3rd power, so I'm going to have to put plus 0x to the 3rd. I do have an x squared, so minus 4x squared plus 6x. We also don't have a constant, so I'm going to put plus 0 at the end. So there's three things I want you to make sure of. That your dividend is in descending order, your divisor. Your dividend is in descending order. So 4, 3, 2, 1 constant. And also that if you're missing an exponent, okay, in either of these, you can put a 0x to that power, to the missing power, to hold that spot. It's called a dummy variable. Okay, now remember what we do first. After we get it set up, we ask ourselves, what do we multiply this first guy in line by to get this first guy in line? So I'm ignoring the minus 4. I'm ignoring the rest of my divisor over here, my dividend. I got my words confused today. So x times what is 4x to the 4th? So it's 4x to the 3rd, and I line that up against or above my x to the 3rd term. Where you put these terms up here actually is not important, but I think keeping it all organized and lined up helps a lot. So 4x to the 3rd times x. Now I'm using the distributive property, so 4x to the 3rd times x is 4x to the 4th, and then 4x to the 3rd times negative 4 is going to be negative 16x to the 3rd. Now at this stage I want you to make sure all your like terms are lined up. X to the 4th are under x to the 4th, and x to the 3rds are under x to the 3rds. And now you see why we had to put that 0x to the 3rd there. If it weren't there, this would be here, and there would be nowhere to line your x to the 3rd term up. Okay, so that's why that 0x to the third term is there. Remember, the next step is you change your signs and add down. So this cancels. 0x to the third plus 16x to the third is 16x to the third. And I just recopy the rest of my polynomial. Okay. Now I do this step again where I ask myself, it's the multiplication or division step. X times what gives me 16x to the third? Okay. And the answer to that is plus 16x squared. So now I do the distributive step. I do 16x squared times x is 16x to the third. And I also have to do 16x squared times negative 4. So that'd be negative 64x squared. Okay, so again, once you figure out what goes up here, then you multiply it times everything that's over here as your divisor. Then you change the signs of your entire polynomial down here and add. So 16x to the third plus a negative 16x to the third cancels. Negative 4x squared plus a positive 64x squared is a positive 60x squared. Then I bring down the remaining polynomial terms. Then we do it again. So this is this, only look at the first thing in line for this multiplication step. X times what is 60x squared? Well, 60x. So I put plus 60x, and then I do the distributive step. 60x times x is 60x squared. 60x times negative 4 is going to be negative 240x. I change the sign, I make that negative, I make that positive, those cancel. I add 6x and a 240x, remember we're adding is 246x, and the plus 0 can just come down. Then I ask myself x times what? Gives me just this first guy in line, 246, and that's a positive 246, so multiply 246 times x, and that's 246x. And then multiply 246 times negative 4. And I'm going to use my calculator to get that. And that's negative 984. Don't forget this last step. You still have to change the signs and add. So this cancels. 0 plus 984 is 984. This guy is your remainder. Okay. So in black, I'm going to write my final answer. Quotient right here, 4x to the third plus 16x squared plus 60x plus 246 plus 984 divided by divisor, which is x minus 4. Alright, so let's try another long division. Okay, so again, this numerator, 2x to the fifth minus 8x to the fourth plus 2x to the third plus x squared, is my dividend. The guy in the bottom when I'm dividing by with. And notice the notation. You know, problem 1 that we did, I'm going to flip back there on you real quick. Look at problem 1. They use the division sign. Okay? But the next problem we just did, I wrote all over it, uses a fraction bar. And then this problem also uses a fraction bar. But the fraction bar is just like a division sign. So we're taking 2x to the fifth minus x to the fourth plus 2x to the third plus x squared and dividing it up into 2x to the third plus 1 pieces. So 2x to the third plus 1, notice it's in descending order. It's missing exponents, but for the divisor, that's okay. Okay, so 2x to the third plus 1 can go in front. You do not have to put plus 0x squared plus 0x because it's the divisor. The dividend, you do have to put anything missing. Notice 5, 4, 3, 2. There's not anything missing initially, but there's no x and no constant. So I'm going to put 2x to the fifth minus 8x to the fourth plus 2x to the third plus x squared. That's a 1x squared. Plus, there's not an x, so I'm going to put plus 0x plus 0. Okay, and now I'm going to do my division step, which really is more like a multiplication step. I ask myself, what do I multiply this by to make it this? and it's an x squared. You see that? So the 2 is already there, so I don't need a number, but I multiply x to the third by x squared to make it an x to the fifth. And remember, I just line up my x squared with my x squared term. So multiply x squared times 2x to the third, and I get 2x to the fifth. Now the next step, remember distributive property, now I'll multiply x squared times 1. Careful right here, okay? X squared times 1 is x squared. It doesn't go under the x to the fourth. It doesn't go under the x to the third. It goes under the x squared term. Remember, line up like terms. That's very important. A lot of times they just line up automatically. Boom, 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 down the line. The last 2 problems we did that. This one doesn't. And the reason is because there's no x squared and there's no x term right here. Now they're lined up. Remember, you run through and change the sign. So this positive 2x to the fifth turns negative. This positive x squared also turns negative. Those cancel out. Now the negative 8x to the fourth doesn't have anything down here, so it just comes down. The 2x to the third also doesn't have anything down here, so it comes down. Now this is a 0x squared. I'm going to go ahead and put 0x squared here because I need something to hold that spot. The x to the fifth I didn't because I'm not going to have another x to the fifth term to line up. Plus 0x plus 0. Now I do my step again. What do I multiply 2x to the third by to make it a negative 8x to the fourth? Okay. Well, I have to multiply 2 by a negative 4 to make it a negative 8. And I have to multiply x to the third by an x to make it an x to the fourth. So it's going to be a negative 4x. Okay, so negative 4x times 2x to the third is negative 8x to the fourth. And a negative 4x times 1 is negative 4x. Now I can't line it up here. I can't line it up here. I must line it up right here. So negative 4x. Okay, let's change the sign and add. Now I add down this negative 8x to the fourth added to this positive 8x to the fourth cancels. And you'll notice that happens every time. As long as you did the right multiplication step and changed the signs, they should cancel. This 2x to the third doesn't have a friend, so he just comes down. Okay, this 0x squared also doesn't have a friend, he just comes down. The 0x plus 4x will be plus 4x, and then this 0 comes down. Now I've got one more time to do this. Notice this is an x to the third and this is an x to the third. That means we're almost done. What do I multiply 2x to the third to make it a 2x to the third? 1, right? It's positive, so I put plus 1. 1 times 2x to the third is 2x to the third. 1 times 1 is 1. Now again, where do I put it? I don't put it here because that's an x squared. I don't put it here because that's an x. I put it with the constant. Okay, change the signs. This turns negative. This also turns negative. Those cancel. I have a 0x squared plus 4x, and then this is 0 minus 1, so minus 1. Now, remember how I said we can't do this anymore? Notice this is really nothing because it's 0x squared. You can just ignore it, okay? I can't multiply 2x to the third by something to make it an x to the first. Once this degree is smaller than our divisor, we're finished. This whole thing right here is your remainder. Okay? Alright, so my answer, let's write it in black to make it formal, is 2x to the... No, it's not. Let's back up. Sorry about that. Erase, erase. Okay. Let me try it again. Let me read the right thing. See this guy up here, hard to see? That's your quotient. X squared minus 4x plus 1. So I have x squared minus 4x plus 1 plus, now my remainder is a positive 4x minus 1. I can just put 4x minus 1 over my divisor, which is 2x to the third plus 1. This is the answer that I'm looking for. Okay? I hope that helps. That's all the long division that I have for you. So I'm going to do a part 2 of this video and do some synthetic division to help you out, okay?